Welcome back, everyone. Today we have part 3 of What is Heaven and Hell, and I hope to add on to some of the ideas that I proposed in the first 2 parts. So today we're going to talk a little bit about religion. We're going to slowly start to bring in some ideas from Christianity. That's where I think we get the most of our ideas of heaven and hell from. They definitely have, I think, the strongest view on that point. But like I said in the first video, I think the Buddhist idea of like reincarnation and coming back, I think that that's linked to heaven and hell. And I think you experience heaven and hell like I elaborated in my first video. I think you experience it when you die in an instant, but it feels like infinity, and you relive your entire life from like a third eye, but also first person perspective. You kind of switch between the two. You jump around your life. You see the sins. You see the good deeds, you see how those affected people, and that experience, good or bad, is either heaven or hell. And I also explained that we probably live through both, because nobody's all good, nobody's all bad. I don't think you go to an all bad place or an all good place on a life that was both good and bad. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about our decision to have heaven and hell, our decision of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. I'm not going to get too much into the Christian story. I need to read more commentaries on it. I need to do a little bit more research before I do a whole episode just on the Garden of Eden. But to get a little bit into the concepts of it today, the idea that humanity chose to bite the apple, learn about good and evil, and gain free will. This idea that might be the cause of heaven and hell, might be the cause of good and evil in the world, might be the cause of the existence of death, but also might be the cause of the existence of life. Now, we can argue this in the comments, because obviously there's people who understand Christian thought a lot better than me out there. So if I'm getting this wrong, you guys can let me know, which I probably am. But I think that the idea to gain free will, to bite the apple, I guess, to get the knowledge of good and evil, I think it was a choice made equally by God and man. I've established before that I think God is the infinity of all infinities, the true infinity, the true everything. And I think people, consciousness, is finite. It's the most finite. It's the one. I only know what it's like to live my life. I only ever will know what it's like to live my life in this lifetime, unless I come back and I live one of your lives, or maybe I've already lived one of your lives and now I'm living this life, or maybe you're going to live my life next, or maybe you've already lived my life before. What it probably is we've all lived each other's lives at some point. It's just time feels linear, how we're existing and experiencing things right now. But I think in the grand scheme of things, we're all finite parts of the same infinite God, and we just experience finite life. Because to be finite, you have to experience in a finite way, which is why I think we live in 3-4 dimensions. We live in a linear timeline. You can't jump back in time, can't break the laws of space and physics. So I think there's restrictions on us so that we can have this finite life. Now, the reason why I think it was the choice between God and humanity is because I think God chose to have those individual finite parts of himself have life at the same time that those individual finite parts of God chose to have life. Like it was a simultaneous decision, if that makes any sense. So now these finite parts of the infinite are now living. But the only way to live, to have life, is to have choice. That is the only way to live. So now we become independent, free will aspects of an infinite thing that is all-knowing, omnipresent, all those things, all the omni words that describe God, right? The infinity of all infinities. So now we're living, so we actually have that free will. We get to make decisions in the process of God, right? Like I can live my life however I want to live it, and it makes a small difference in the grand scheme of everything, but it does make a difference. It does make a difference, and there's a butterfly effect, so I don't even know. Making this video might, who knows, it might get saved for tens of thousands of years, and aliens might see it, 1 million years in the future, and it might influence aliens to create something 1 billion years in the future, which saves the universe 1 trillion years in the future. That's possible, As crazy as that all sounded, like science fiction garbage, that's possible. Like we don't know the limits. We don't know the limits of what we can do, or the effects of we don't know the limits of the effects of our actions. So we have this free will, and we get to choose between good and evil. We get to choose. So this is the emergence of consciousness. I think this is the emergence of humanity. Pattern recognition develops to a point where we become conscious. So to fit this with evolution for a moment. I know there might be some creationists out there that think, humans were just created as we are now, but let's fit this into the evolutionary perspective for a second. Let's say that we evolved to a point, like at the beginning of 2001, A Space Odyssey, where we start to recognize stuff. We start to see the patterns, and we become conscious. We become humans. We become the next level of intelligence. We become something different. So now that we're there, we have this pattern recognition. We have this different level of pattern recognition that other animals don't seem to have. And now we can choose the easy route, the easy path, because we can see it, right? We can watch things happen over and over and over again, and we go, if I intervene here, or if I stop this person from breathing at this point, if I kill the person that I'm out on the hunt with right after we get the kill, then I get double the meat. So you start to put these things together. You start to recognize these patterns on where you can make things easier, where you can cut some corners. And then the evil starts to seep in. That's the snakes getting into the Garden of Eden. It's the seeping in of evil, because now you start to have easy choices. And when you have those choices, it becomes evil, because you've recognized the thing. You've recognized this is how it's supposed to go. This is how I can make it easier. And when you start to choose that, you start to do evil. That's like the birth of evil. Now, good comes after that. Good comes after evil. The natural state of man is evil. After that, we're all born in sin, right? It's the Christian idea. After that, you start to get good. So you see something, you see a pattern. You see, okay, I go out hunting with the same dude every day. We go out, we hunt. He usually kills the animal. I sometimes kill it, but he usually kills the animal. And I start to realize, hey, I could just kill this guy and take the meat for myself and have double the meat. But then you have your conscience come in, this other voice, which would be the voice of God, I guess. This other voice that comes in and says, no, that's not right. That's not right. And it's kind of the voice of reason going, if you kill this guy, he's the one who's getting the meat for you most of the time. So now what? You're going to start hunting alone and have less of a chance of getting meat after this? Like, this might seem like it'll benefit you now, which is all sin. All sin is categorized like this. It'll benefit you now, but later it'll come back to haunt you. So you take the easy route to begin with. Later that catches up and bites you in the ass. So I think that's the birth of free will and the birth of sin. That's how it happened. We developed this pattern recognition where we could start to take the easy route. Some of us do. That's evil. That's the sin of Cain. Some of us take the good route. We make the proper sacrifices. Right? We can take the easy route, but we're not going to take the easy route. That's the path of Abel. That is literally what the story of Cain and Abel means. So this is the birth of free will. It's also the birth of heaven and hell. Because I think with this birth of consciousness and the birth of us leaving the walled Garden of Eden, us getting out into the real world, into actual history, we start to... What we've seen with the enlightening of good and evil is now reality. We're not protected anymore. We're not sheltered. So while we can do great things that we could never do in the Garden of Eden, we could do true good. Because you can't do true good in the Garden of Eden. You can't. Because everything's good. Everything's perfect. It's in a perfect state. You can't do true good unless you can do true evil. And you can't do true evil unless you can do true good. They're inseparable. So now you can do real good things. You can do, you can become a saint in the real world. Or you can live out the bad that we've unleashed on the world through the biting of the apple. You can become a dictator or a tyrant, and you can kill millions of people. And you can contribute to a force that's been unleashed, which is entropy. So entropy is is literally, it's worse than evil. It's what the devil runs from, I think. It's the devil runs away from entropy and tries to push you down and get away from it because he's scared of it. That's what I think it is. Entropy is just the death of the universe. It's the nothing consuming the everything. And it's terrifying. It's why black holes scare you on like a primal level. You can feel it in your soul that a black hole is more terrifying than a great white shark. It's more terrifying than any creature on Earth, yet we've only been able to see them rather recently. But you know that in your heart because you know what it represents. It represents true entropy. And that's been unleashed on the world through our own choice, through our own choice of being able to live, because you can't live without death. Otherwise, it wouldn't be living. You would just be a part of God. You'd just be a part of the Garden of Eden. You'd be a part of heaven. You'd be a part of the everything. But because you have the choice to be a part of the everything and to live a life that's Christ-like and hopefully get back to heaven, or you can choose to fall. You can choose to pull people down with you, and you can go the other way. And there are people who go the other way. There are people who aim down, who aim at hell, who aim at the worst possible thing. That's what they're aiming at. Some people are possessed by demons and they aim down without knowing they're aiming down. They could still be saved, but some people are straight aiming down. That's what they want. And those people exist. And the people who aim straight up exist too. Don't get me wrong. It's a spectrum. Humanity is a spectrum. But I think that that's true. I think the existence of death, not just the death of human beings, but the existence of death of the universe, the death of God, the possible death of God, I would say. I don't think God can die. But I think the possible death of God is put in there when we make the choice. And again, I think we make the choice simultaneously. This is probably blasphemous. This is like heretical. But I think we made the choice simultaneously with God to have that free will. I think it's like God putting the fruit of knowledge in the garden in the first place and not putting it outside of the garden. I think that's like kind of his choice. Like he wants us to have life, and we want to have life. And you can only have life with knowing good and evil, because otherwise you're not living. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not talking myself in circles here. I hope this makes sense to some people. But I think that's how heaven and hell came about. Now, I want to get back to grounded reality a little bit here. We'll get out of deep space and come back to regular space for a second. Still going to be some abstract stuff going on, but I want to talk a little bit about how I personally experience the heaven and hell that I described in part 1, because I feel it all the time. I feel my consciousness judging me all the time, and I feel like that consciousness, that voice that's telling me, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. You're not making the proper sacrifices. If you made more videos every day, you might be successful on YouTube. You might be doing this full time, but you don't. You take some time and you watch your TV show and you slack off and you're not making the right sacrifice. I hear this voice all the time. It's constantly telling me, make better sacrifices, make better sacrifices. And I constantly try to do that, but I always fall short. So that voice in my head, yes, that's probably God, but that's not a good enough description. I want something more than that. So what I think that is, I think that voice is me re-seeing my life right now. That's me in the afterlife, re-seeing my entire life and looking down and going, oh yeah, I remember when I was 24 and I was slacking off, and man, if I put more time into my YouTube channel when I was 24, I could have had a super successful YouTube channel by 26 instead of 28. And like, I don't know if my YouTube channel is going to be successful, whether it's going to blow up tomorrow or whether it's going to take till I'm 35 for this thing to blow up. I don't know, because I'm here right now, confined to the 4 dimensions and confined to linear time, just like you are. But I think that voice in my head is the me that's out of that, that's closer to God, that's more God-like and is viewing my life. And I think these comments that he's making over my life, going, hey, I should have done that better. I should have done that better. Oh, I should have. That's that voice, him commenting on my life, is the voice that seeps into my head going, hey, you should be doing this better. You should be doing that better. Because what other voice would be that invested in my outcome than my own? If I had, an all version of me, some third eye version of me that just always hovered over my life like a ghost, and I could somehow interact with it, look up to it, and talk to it, I'd be talking to that thing all day. I'd be like, yo, what do I do next? What do I do next? How do I become the most successful person of all time? How do I become the best human being ever? I'd be constantly asking him because he'd have all the answers. Now, that voice, that consciousness is a little bit hidden, right? It's the perfect amount of mysterious and directness. It's direct in that it's telling you, hey, you're not making the right sacrifices. It's very direct. I can hear it. But it's not as direct as like some ghost or apparition that I can talk to in real life. It's like the perfect amount of mystery so that it pushes me, but it doesn't force me. It doesn't make me do the things that I should be doing, but it pushes me in that direction. And I'm so glad I have that voice. But I truly think that voice is, I think it's the voice of God. I think that's the right definition. But I think that even more than that, it's my own voice, because it's me critiquing myself in my afterlife state where I'm kind of re-looking over my life. And I feel this too when I do good things. Like when I do something good in life, I feel that voice go like, yes, that was right. You're on the right path. Keep doing things like that. And that's the devil and the angel on your shoulder, right? And the devil, I think that might also be me. I don't know. I haven't thought about it as much. I think there is a demonic force that is pulling me towards entropy, that's pulling me towards death, towards destruction and satanic and demonic action. And I do have that in my head. I have a voice of evil that does tell me, like I said before, to take the easy path, which is evil all the time, even if you don't recognize it. It leads to evil. It leads to sin. But there's also a voice in my head that's like incredibly destructive, that's like, hurt that person. Like, why? Why would I hurt that person? Hurt that person. Cause the most damage that you can to that person. See how far you can go. Like, see how much you can piss them off. See how much you can bother them. How much can you ruin their life? I have that voice in my head too. I don't know how separate that voice is from, the same voice that's telling me all the good stuff. It might be just two sides of the same coin. That might be the evil version of me. The version of me that ends up in hell. The version of me that drags me down into the abyss is constantly trying to drag me down there right now. It's just a voice in my head that's like, hey, I like it when we're down in the dumps. I like it when you end your life, early and you do horrible things. And I think that voice might also be me. So that's terrifying. But this is something that I've thought a lot about recently, because I'm like, well, how do I feel this in everyday life? Because I'm constantly striving towards something. I'm striving towards Christ. I want to be like Christ, and that's God and man that's there for me to look up to, but I'm not Christ, because I'm never going to be Christ. I know that. I know it's an ever-receding horizon. I've sinned way too much in my life to ever even get close to being like Christ. So what's my Christ? Like, what's my version of that? Well, it's the ultimate version of me. So there is some sort of good version of me that lived the best possible life. Like if you had all the multiverse versions of me, there has to be one that lived the best possible life by the standards and metrics of God, I guess. Like the most moral life, not so much the most successful, money-wise or intellectually, but the morally, like the version of me that was the best in the whole multiverse. Whether or not the multiverse exists or not doesn't matter, but the best version of me, that's one voice in my head, and the other voice in my head is the worst version of me, because I also don't think that I can be Satan, thankfully. Like, that's also a good thing to know, that you can't be Satan. There's always a worse evil than you. You can be Stalin, and there's always going to be a Mao. That's just the way the world is. There's always going to be another evil, another worse evil. You might think like, okay, Mao is like the worst person to ever exist. 100 million people killed. How can you top that? Maybe there'll be a person coming by in another 1,000 years, or maybe less than that, maybe 500, maybe in the next 100 years, who kills 1 billion people. And then you're like, whoa, well, that's obviously way worse. So you can never be Satan, and you can never be Christ. But there are satanic and Christ-like versions of you that watch over your life, I think. I think those are the devils and angels talked about in Christianity. And I think that's right. Because I do think you relive your life. There's a lot of evidence for this coming out now, that you replay your life, that and they're phrasing it weird because we don't know exactly. It's hard to say. We're talking about experiences that happen after death in somebody's brain, and we don't even understand consciousness. So how would we understand that? But it's kind of being phrased right now like you relive your memories. It's not exactly it, I think. From what I've seen and from what I've heard from talking to people who have actually experienced this, is you relive the whole thing. You relive your whole life. It just feels like an instance, but it feels like, no, it feels like infinity, but it happens in an instance is what I'm trying to say. So I think that's real. I think that actually happens. And I think that's what heaven and hell is. I think you get to decide whether or not you're going to heaven or hell. It's completely in your hands. You're writing the fate of it right now. If you're treating people around you badly, you're going to see the ripple effects of that, and that's going to be more terrifying than anything. I can't think of anything more terrifying. Like, I will take getting poked in the ass by a pitchfork and burnt alive and tortured for eternity. That sounds way better to me than reliving the people who I've hurt the most in life and seeing how that affected their entire lives. Because I've hurt some people pretty badly in my life. Like, I've done evil things to people, like malicious, satanic things where I was trying to hurt them. I was trying to cause them harm. And I know that that has ripple effects. Like, they might not trust people as well anymore. Or, like, I don't know, because I don't think about it as much, right? Because I'm living here. I have my own life to live. I'm preoccupied. I have an ego. But in an afterlife version, I would have to see all of that again, and that would be terrifying to me. And I think you do get comforted in a way if you do live a good life, if you try to do good things, if you try to pass it on, pass it forward, or whatever the saying is. If you try to put good out in the world, you're going to see that. You're going to see that in your life, obviously, but you're also going to see that in the afterlife when you relive it. And I don't know what the extent of that is. Like, I don't know if I do enough good things today that if I relive my life when I die, maybe I shoot forward 1 trillion years into the future and I see that my good deeds have somehow impacted humanity in a way that, now we're prospering on thousands of different planets across, 100 different galaxies. Like, I don't know. You don't know. None of us do. So it's fun to talk about for those reasons. But I thought I'd just add a little bit more to the conversation today. Talk to you guys a little bit about how I feel this presence of, my consciousness kind of reliving my life. I kind of feel it. Because like I said, I think that version of me, that dead version of me, the consciousness at the end of my life, it's free. It's not constrained by space or time. It can jump around. I think it does whisper to me. I think that's my consciousness. So I wanted to detail that out for you guys today and talk a little bit about the origins of heaven and hell. I'll do a better job of that in the future when I read a little bit more commentary on the biblical stories, because I'm still working my way through Summa Theologica right now. It's a bloody long work. Thank you, Thomas, but holy, that's a long piece of work. It's going to take me a while to get through that, but I want to read enough commentaries. I want to read enough other people's thoughts on it to really understand it as deeply as I can before I do like a full episode covering the Garden of Eden and the fall of man and the birth of free will. But I hope I touched on a little bit of it today and fleshed out some of that stuff, because yeah, so interesting to me. I want to know what you guys think too, because these videos, I can't figure out these questions on my own. It's the same with the What is God videos. Like, I'm never going to answer these questions. I'm never going to have like, this is what it is, and now there needs to be a book written about it, and that's going to be the only book ever written because this is what it is, 100%. That's never going to happen. I'm not dealing in the realms of facts here. This is going to be speculation for all of us for all of eternity. It's kind of built into the reality of human life. We can't know the answers to these questions. So the best thing that we can do is talk about them and discuss different ideas with people, and hopefully that gets us somewhere. I hope these conversations are beneficial in some way. If they're not educational, hopefully they're at least entertaining. So if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. It helps boost this channel and the algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it means the world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.